Breaking news. Breaking news, everyone. Trump has a new supporter. Yeah, yes, a very staunch supporter. Now, I know this is the most important thing you all want to listen to. This is where our politics is today, Tom Benson. Lindsay Lohan.
Oh, boy.
Defends President Trump in a tweet. She said, stop bullying him and start trusting him.
Mm-hmm.
She said, this is our president. Stop bullying him and start trusting him. Thank you personally for supporting the USA. She then said, Trump, Ivanka are kind people. Donald Trump Jr. are kind people. As an American, why speak poorly of anyone? Hashtag faith, hashtag 4th of July. What? Wow.
Over the years, there's always been an enemy. And right now, Trump is the enemy of progressives. He's a unifying factor for them.
I just never thought I would agree
with Lindsay
Lohan. Since when? Where are we in this country when Lindsay Lohan is the voice of reason? This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee, the true voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason. I thank you all for joining us. We are on until 10 p.m. tonight. I hope you all had a wonderful Independence Day celebration. For those who celebrated out there, apparently there's a lot of people. There's a new movement of not celebrating the 4th of July or hating the 4th of July. Yeah, Tom Benson, you're shaking your head.
I don't get that at all.
But they're woke.
You know?
Hashtag woke, which is just, no, they're not awake. They are very much not awake. They are very much not woke.
They don't want to admit what has happened. They're in denial is basically what it all is.
Yeah, and you're right. A lot of it's about Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Because, well, I wanted to get this a little way. We'll talk about it now. A lot of them decided to celebrate Melania, or what's her name? One of Obama's daughters. Now I can't remember what her name. It's like Melania Obama.
Yeah.
And they were a whole bunch of stuff on Twitter where they were saying celebrate her birthday instead of the 4th of July. Because,
please.
It's just insane. It's just insane. Let me see if I can find that. Oh my gosh.
Well, the interesting thing about Independence Day is it's to
Malia, that's her name. But go ahead.
To honor people who made our freedoms possible today over the years.
Yeah, the freedom to do, I guess, not celebrated.
Right.
Malia Obama Day. A bunch of people were tweeting out to celebrate that. By the way, Tom Benson, you're producing today. How are you? How was your independence?
I am fine. It was nice and quiet. We have. I was babysitting an animal last night that is scared to death of all the fireworks. So
yeah, my cat wasn't too thrilled about it either.
We were huddled, although it didn't do any good. Poor dog was just panting all over the place. And they also say that the July 4th and July 5th, more dogs go missing than any other time of the year because they're so upset over the fireworks.
Really?
Yeah.
All I know is there are a lot of people who there must be a very bad bird problem in Florida.
Don't look up.
Because I mean, to get these kind of fireworks, you have to sign a waiver that you're using them to scare away the birds.
Sure.
Yeah. And there was there must be just really birds everywhere that are causing trouble because there was a lot of people apparently scaring away those birds.
A lot of birds, yes. A lot of angry birds.
Yes. Yeah, but I had a lot of fun too watching fireworks. So in this whole point of people not celebrating Independence Day and the 4th of July, there was an article by none other than Patrick Buchanan. Big Trump supporter he is. I don't really agree with everything he says. Obviously, he's a big nationalist. But he had an article here, and I don't agree with everything in this article, actually, but it does raise some interesting questions that I want to throw out there. The title of the article is, and by the way, if you want to react, you can call 407-916-5400 or text to 23680. It says, in the first line of the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson speaks of one people. The Constitution agreed upon by the Founding Fathers in Philadelphia begins, "We the people." And who were these people? He puts in quotes. He says in Federalist number 2, John Jay writes of them as one united people, descended from the same ancestors, speaking the same language, professing the same religion, attached to the same principles of government, very similar in their manners and customs. He says, Patrick Buchanan continues on here, he says, if such are the elements of nationhood and peoplehood, can we still speak of Americans as one nation and one people? He says, we no longer have same ancestors. They are of every color and from every country. We do not speak one language, but rather English, Spanish, and a host of others. We long ago ceased to profess the same religion. We are evangelical Christians, mainstream Protestants, Catholics, Jews, Mormons, Muslims, Hindus, and Buddhists, agnostics, and atheists. He says, Federalist number 2 celebrated our unity. Today's elites proclaim that our diversity is our strength. But is this true or a tenet of trendy ideology? Now, I just want to point out one thing. This idea that, the one thing I disagree with him on is, yes, the country was probably more united in the beginning than we are now. But this idea that America at the beginning was this homogeneous nation where everyone had the same religion and the same beliefs in government and the same ideas and they were one people is actually not true if you read the history. In fact, that was one of the biggest struggles in forming the nation to begin with.
Who are we? What are we? Yeah.
Well, but, you know, we have this saying, e pluribus unum, out of many one. Mm-hmm. That was framed because there were 13 different colonies. And in fact, those 13 different colonies, 13 different states, had many different beliefs, many different cultures. And it was really hard for them, actually, to unite as one country because they saw each state as their own country. So this whole idea that we were just all one united people based on the same, like he says, the same religion. No, actually, people came here because of freedom of religion. Yeah, most of them were Christian. There's no doubt about that. And there was a Judeo-Christian ethic that was the foundation. But there were Quakers, there were Puritans, there were Baptists, Presbyterians, Anglicans, Episcopalians. And they had a lot of different agreements between those religious groups. And in the Constitution, in the Constitutional Convention, it was extremely difficult to come with a compromise because you had the difference between state rights and a national identity. And Benjamin Franklin, had trouble. That's why he put out his cartoon. This was actually even before the American Revolution of Unite or Die, because he was trying to get us to unite in the French and Indian War. And then later, it was the same thing. It was hard to get us to unite. So this whole idea that we were just one people at peace and never had any disagreements is a little much for me that Pat Buchanan is going on. But that being said, it did raise the question in my head, what does unite us? I'm not sure I have the answer to that question anymore. There used to be certain things about America, about this country, that united us. And then we would celebrate those things, say on Independence Day, the 4th of July. And yet now we have a movement in this country, the woke movement or whatever, where we don't even want to celebrate the 4th of July, where America is responsible for all the bad things in the world. And you look at it and you ask, what unites us anymore? Is there anything that unites us? We are so divided that it's hard to come up with that. I would hope there would be some things, which I'll get to, but let me continue on with Patrick Buchanan's piece here. He says, after the attempted massacre of Republican congressmen at the ball field in Alexandria, Fareed Zakaria wrote, the political polarization that is ripping this country apart is about identity, gender, race, ethnicity. Why do I have such trouble saying that word, ethnicity, sexual orientation, and social class. He might have added religion, morality, culture, and history. Zakaria seems to be tracing this disintegration of our society to that very diversity that its elites proclaim to be its greatest attribute. If the core issues are about identity, culture, and religion, then compromise seems immoral. American politics is becoming more like Middle Eastern politics, where there is no middle ground between being Sunni or Shiite. That actually, there's a lot of truth there. Because how do we compromise and find middle ground with groups that believe that this country is evil, that it's not exceptional? Not only that, but that our history should not be celebrated. How do you compromise with groups that hate this country and everything it stands for and everything it was founded on? I don't know. You would think there would be things that we compromise, but that is where we are, and that, I believe, is what is causing a lot of the division in our politics today. He continues on. He says, among the issues on which we Americans are at war with one another, abortion, homosexuality, same-sex marriage, white cops, black crime, Confederate monuments, LGBT rights, affirmative action. Was the discovery of America and conquest of this continent among the centuries, among the most glorious chapters in the history of man? Or was it a half millennium marked by mankind's most scarlet of sins? The genocide of native peoples, the enslavement of Africans, the annihilation of indigenous cultures, the spoliation of a virgin land. It's hard to compromise when you have such different points of view on our history, on our principles, on what you believe about our country. He says, is America really God's country? Or was Barack Obama's pastor, Reverend Jeremiah Wright, justified when after 9/11 he denounced calls of God bless America with the curse, God damn America? He says, with its silence, the congregation seemed to assent. He continues on a little bit later. He says, are we still one nation under God? At the Democratic Convention in Charlotte to renominate Obama, a motion to put God back into the platform was hooted and booed by half the assembly. He says, with this July 4th long weekend, many writers have bewailed the animus Americans exhibit towards one another and urged new efforts to reunite us, yet recall again the first words of Jefferson in 1776, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them. He asks, are we approaching such a point? Could the Constitution, as currently interpreted, win the approval of the 2/3 of our citizens and 3/4 of our states? Probably not, in my opinion. If it were not already the supreme law of the land? How would a national referendum on the Constitution turn out when many Americans are already seeking a new constitutional convention? All of which invites the question, are we still a nation? And what is a nation? And he goes on to many different things. He ends by saying, are we passing on the house we inherited or observing its demolition? And really, this is what really got me thinking, what this really did in my mind, because I don't agree that this nation, I mean, he says, oh, we were once a really united people, and now we're just too divided, or we're not a nation anymore. No, we had a lot of divisions, but there were certain things that united us, I believe. One of those being the Bill of Rights. That was kind of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and the principles in the Bill of Rights and Declaration of Independence. That was one thing that definitely would unite us. Yet, I'm not even sure if that does anymore. I'm reading, I just finished a book, actually, by journalist and author Glenn Greenwald. He was the guy who was with Snowden, Edward Snowden, and had all the revelations with him. And he's a leftist. He's a big leftist. But I found myself agreeing with him in a lot and when he talked about the Fourth Amendment and the importance of the government not overreaching and not going beyond the Fourth Amendment, and the importance of your right to privacy from the government. And if this is a leftist, and I'm saying, well, this could be something we could unite on, these ideals. But then I'm thinking, I bet he doesn't believe in the Second Amendment. I bet he doesn't believe in the Ninth Amendment, which basically says that just because the rights are not laid out in the Bill of Rights doesn't mean they don't exist. There are other rights outside of this. Or the 10th Amendment, which basically says if it's not, if it doesn't give the power to Congress in this document, those powers are left to the states and the people. I doubt he believes that. So even when I think we could at least unite behind the Bill of Rights, I'm not even sure we can do that. You look at the First Amendment, the freedom of the press, freedom of assembly, freedom of religion. Can we even unite on that anymore? When you look at what Antifa is doing at these college campuses, and then you look at the Trump protesters interrupting a Shakespeare play just because we don't like it, do we believe in the First Amendment anymore? Do we believe in the idea of freedom of speech, of protecting speech even that you don't like? I'm not even sure we can unite on that anymore. So here's my question. What unites us? Is it just that we all eat at the same restaurants? Even that doesn't even unite us anymore. You have the organic movement dividing us or whatever, but I don't know. It's really troubling to me. 407-916-5400, text to 23680. And this will bring me on to the next point. When I see people on the left going beyond even trying to unite us and just showing outright hatred for our country and our history. And then I'll play my voice of reason of today. And the voice of reason of today is actually from our history, from a prominent African American who talked about the greatness of the Declaration of Independence. Very interesting. 407-916-5400, text to 23680. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
If you miss any of the show, you can download the Beyond Reason podcast on iTunes. The voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason is back now.
So leftist and racial activist Sean King works for the New York Daily News. He tweeted out over the weekend, actually retweeted something. And let me see if I can find the exact...
This is the guy who was behind the Black Lives Matter...
And a big part of it, yes.
...movement.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
He tweeted out, I'm trying to find the exact tweet, but he basically retweeted somebody saying, F the 4th, F, F America, F the 4th of July and all that stuff. I had the exact tweet, now I can't find it. But then he retweeted and he said, this is how a lot of my friends feel on this day. And then he tweeted out, America is not the best country, the greatest country in the world. And, it's one thing to say you don't believe that America is the best country in the world. But it's another thing to retweet and basically agree that we shouldn't celebrate our history and basically hate on America. But that's where we are with a good portion of our population.
When they say we're not a great country, who is? What country is?
Yeah, I'm not. And I'm very curious about that. He wrote a piece, which I haven't had a chance to read, that apparently lays out why the United States is not the greatest country in the world. I'd have to go back and read it all, but it's just it's interesting. It's just that he often shows hatred for this country.
And if he was in another country, he would probably be thrown in jail or in prison for whatever.
In a lot of other countries, yeah.
Yeah, for saying what he's saying here freely.
Yep, pretty much. All right, let's take a call here. Let's go to Jerry in Sanford. Jerry, what's your comment on all this?
Well, a house divided against itself shall fall. That's historical value, And we're living in that every day here in America because people start in their own house. How you raise your family is how your politicians are going. They came from a family, those politicians. And how mothers and dads raise their family is how America ends up. They were different when I was in the 40s. I was born earlier than that, and in the 40s it was different. 50s was different. 60s was different. This is the most divided I have ever seen in my life. It can't be just a left or right. People can't just be American and get along. They have to be just like they're trying to destroy Trump. But if Hillary would have gotten in there, it would have been real bad. There was in 1934 a prophet saw a vision when he was 7 years old that there would be an electric car come out. And he saw it in 1933, and he said, a self-driven electric car come out. Well, they barely had telephones in those days. And said, and a woman will be in the White House. And says, then I saw that transvision, and I heard a horrible explosion, and it was nothing but smoke in a crater. Well, a lot of people, about millions of people, knew about this vision.
Okay, Jerry, you're like way off topic. I'm gonna have to let you go. You're talking about a vision or whatever. I'm talking about what unites us. But he did make a good point that he said that in the 60s, he grew up in the 60s or whatever, and he thinks we're more divided now than even then, which is a pretty bold statement. So, but this is the tweet. It said he retweeted something that said, F the flag, F the fourth, F the flag, F the national anthem. Then Sean King retweeted it and said, this accurately represents how most of my friends feel. And then you have Colin Kaepernick, who was out there, and he tweeted out something, and he actually had a little video to go with it. And he said, let me see if I can find the exact thing here. Man, he's like retweeted a whole bunch of stuff today. It's like in the way of his actual thing. But he basically tweeted out, I have a story here. He basically tweeted out that he was going to go home, that this country, he could not celebrate the 4th of July here because of its history. So he was going to go home to Africa to find his independence. And actually, I have a little bit of audio here from the video that he tweeted out. Can you go ahead and play it?
What have I or those I represent to do with your national independence?
And then it shows video of him in Africa and going there. And he's basically saying this isn't his home because of its bad history. So he's going to go to Africa because that's his home.
And they got great history, I suppose, huh?
Well, for one thing, no, that's not your home. You were born here. You were raised here. You've pretty much succeeded beyond your wildest dreams because you grew up here. You are an American, except I guess you don't believe in this country anymore. That is not your home. I'm all for people trying to find out about their heritage, but this wasn't about him trying to find out about his heritage. This was about him hating on this country. So this goes back to the thing, what unites is because people like him hate on this country. It wasn't that he was trying to make an actual protest. That's not why people didn't like him. People didn't like him because he wore socks that had, cops look like pigs, pig cop socks on, or he just showed a hatred for this country and its history. And it's so unfounded, especially since this country has given him more opportunities and more blessings than most people have in the world, than I have. And yet he's saying, well, this is not my home, so I'm going home. And a lot of this has to do with some of the bad things of our past, slavery and so forth. So that brings up another question. Can you be black and still love the history of this country? Can you be black and still celebrate Independence Day? Well, I'm going to play some in the next segment from none other than Martin Luther King. He made a speech, it was a sermon actually, on the 4th of July, 1965, and he talked about the Declaration of Independence. And I think he gives us a good lesson, a lesson for all Americans, something that could unite us as a people. So we'll play that next, and we have a lot more to get to on the show. I do have things that made Yaffee laughy, a couple of those today, so we'll get to those as well. And we're on until 10 p.m. tonight. By the way, I'm on Twitter as well, not just, you don't have to follow just Sean King or Colin Kaepernick. You can follow me at Beyond Reason R. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
If you heart Beyond Reason Radio, listen to the Beyond Reason Radio podcast on iHeartRadio. Just download the iHeartRadio app and search Beyond Reason Radio. This is Orlando's Smart Talk Radio. Beyond Reason Radio continues now.
So somebody texted in. You can text the show to 23680 and said, I would hope that we could be united in our desire for freedom and human rights, that all people are created equally and have the right to be treated justly. I'd hope so, but sometimes I wonder that, because I believe there are people out there that believe if you don't believe like they do, then you don't have the right to be treated justly or fairly. And that happens on both sides. Really more on the left, though. So this is what Colin Kaepernick actually tweeted. I found the actual tweet. He said, how can we truly celebrate independence on a day that intentionally robbed our ancestors of theirs? To find my independence, I went home. And then he has that video, and we played a little bit of it, where he goes to Africa. It's so dumb because, for one, that's not your home. You were born here. You grew up here. You lived here. This is your home. And it gave you a lot of opportunities and a lot of blessings that a lot of people in this world don't even have the chance to get. But bring me back to the point of this whole idea, can we celebrate Independence Day because of things like slavery, which is, as you and I were talking before the show, Tom, there's a lot of misconceptions about slavery as well. It's definitely a bad thing that existed in the beginning of our country, there's no doubt. But for a lot of our history, it only existed in half the country, for one. But it's not like, well, let me put it this way. Let's say they were never brought over here. Would it just be as peaceful and cheery if they stayed in Africa? Africa has been full of violence, full of wars, full of poverty since then.
And still.
And slavery.
Yeah. A
lot of it in religious bigotry and all of that stuff fighting there. And so let's not act like it's a human there's problems with humanity. Humans do bad things, but let's not act like, okay, we have a country here where at least there were ideas formed in the Declaration of Independence and the founding of our country that inspired Americans in the future to get rid of things like slavery, to get rid of things like segregation, to get rid of injustice, and to believe in individual liberty. It was inspired on the idea of America, that idea that doesn't really even exist in a lot of Africa right now.
Apparently he hasn't remembered the Civil War, where hundreds of thousands of people died to end slavery.
Exactly.
So
in this whole question of what he's saying, because you have a whole movement now hating this country, I thought I would play some of a speech from Martin Luther King Jr. on July 4th, 1965. It was actually a sermon at a church he was doing. And he talks about the Declaration of Independence. And I thought it was a really good lesson for all of us, that we all should celebrate what happened when we declared independence from Britain. This is, here it is.
The substance of the dream is expressed in these sublime words. we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now we notice in the very beginning that at the center of this dream is an amazing universalism. It does not say some men, but it says all men. It does not say all white men, but it says all men, which includes black men. It does not say all Gentiles, but it says all men, which includes Jews. It does not say all Protestants, but it says all men, which includes Catholics. And that is something else that we notice in this American dream, which is one of the things that distinguishes our form of government with some of the other totalitarian systems. It says that each individual has certain inherent rights that are neither derived from or conferred by the state. They are gifts from the hand of the Almighty God. Very seldom, if ever, in the history of the world has a socio-political document expressed in such profound, eloquent, and unequivocal language the dignity and the worth of human personality. For the American dream reminds us that every man is the heir of a legacy of worthfulness. But ever since the founding fathers of our nation dreamed this dream, America has been something of a schizophrenic personality. On the one hand, we have proudly professed the noble principles of democracy. On the other hand, we have sadly practiced the very antithesis of those principles. Indeed, slavery and segregation have been strange paradoxes in a nation founded on the principle that all men are created equal. But now more than ever before, America is challenged to realize its noble dream. Maladjusted is Thomas Jefferson, who in the midst of an age amazingly adjusted to slavery could cry out in words lifted to cosmic proportions, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal."
So Martin Luther King, on a sermon on July 4th, 1965, talks about, throughout most of it, that was just part of it, talks about the Declaration of Independence, talks about the principles enshrined in that document, talks about the noble idea and the noble dream of America. And then he admits that there are times when this country has not always lived up to that dream. No country has, ever, because we're humans. And humanity has its bad just like it has its good. But he often goes back to that and even mentions it in his famous I Have a Dream speech on Washington. He even mentions those words. And he says the Constitution was a promissory note for future generations to live freely. But he talks about how great the idea of America is, how great the dream of America is. And yet we have people today that can't even look at that anymore. that's what America is really all about, is it not? It's about those ideas that were enshrined in its founding. If you're going to look for a country that's been perfect in everything it's done in its history, you're not going to find it. It doesn't exist. That's a part of humanity. But America, at least in its founding, put forth ideas on paper and in its form of government that enshrined and inspired people towards freedom in the future. And those ideas would inspire future whites and blacks to make this a better country, to try to live up to those ideals, to that dream more and more every day. Can't we at least unite behind that? You celebrate that idea? Even blacks or even Native Americans or any immigrants, anything, should at least say, yes, this country hasn't been perfect. No country has been perfect. But this country was founded on a dream that is worth celebrating. And because it was founded on those ideals, it made us a great country. And if you look at our history, there are so many good things that this country has done for the world. It has been the light to the world in so many ways because it tried to reach those ideals. And this idea that, well, because we had some bad things, that we should just hate this history of this country, that blacks should hate the history of this country. It's sad. So I would encourage everyone to look at what Martin Luther King said. And I didn't agree with everything Martin Luther King said. There was some of that speech where he talked about how he supports the war on poverty. You know, it's by Lyndon Johnson and stuff like that. And that was just misguided belief that the government could solve those problems, which we find out it can't. But I think there's something noble about even an African American at the time who was being persecuted because of segregation could still celebrate the words of the Declaration of Independence and still celebrate the idea and the dream of America. Can we at least do that? I would hope so. 407-916-5400, text to 23680. We will end this hour with things that made me laughy. Yaffee, of course. In the next hour also, we'll get into a little bit of what's going on with Trump versus CNN, which is just some ridiculous stuff. But there's also some other things in the news that are really not getting a lot of attention that I've sort of found. And it needs to get a lot of attention because they're really important. So we'll talk about those things as well in the next hour. We're on until 10 p.m. tonight. Make sure to send me your phone request on Facebook or follow me on Twitter at Beyond Reason R. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
It would be beyond reason not to listen to Yaffee on your TuneIn Radio app. Download the app today and search Beyond Reason Radio. The conscience in your ear telling you the difference between right and wrong. Yaffee is back on the air.
Yes, welcome back to the show, everyone. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We are on till 10 p.m. tonight. We've talked about a lot of different things. If you missed any of the first hour, I will post the podcast after the show. You'll definitely want to check out. I talked about how it seems like a lot of people we can't unite anymore based on anything, not even the Bill of Rights or whatever. And I talked about things that should unite us and how there is a movement in this country that just hates this country and how that makes it difficult to unite us. But we should all be united on the principles of freedom. Also, well, we have to end the hour because it is that time of the show once again. Yes, it is time for things that made Yaffee laughy. And this one, I don't even know how to describe this one. So there was a broadcast on a California TV news station, KTLA, with reporter Wendy Birch. And she decides to go to the Hermosa Beach Ironman competition. And it's not quite the Ironman competition you would think of, really. So we have the audio of this. Thank God. I don't think anybody wants to see the video.
So, in other words, these Ironmen are not real Ironmen. They're just weekenders.
They're iron. They're, trying to survive something.
Yeah.
Here's the audio of it.
Live just about a half hour ago, hundreds of people descending on the Hermosa Beach to begin a unique Ironman competition.
Yes, it includes running, paddling, and drinking beer. Wendy Birch in the middle of the action. Good morning.
Yeah. I once had a dream like this, that I was in the middle of a mosh pit with a lot of people who were drinking.
Where's your beer?
Hi, how are you?
Need a beer.
No. Come on over here, my friend. How are you? It's getting ugly. This is the true test of the endurance. Now, let's just recap. You guys ran a mile on the beach. You paddled a mile in the ocean. And now what are you doing?
Chugging a six-pack of beer.
Chugging a six-pack of beer. I feel that you are very well. What's going on? No. It's getting ugly.
Yes, there's a girl losing
Sarah.
her lunch.
Sarah was trying to finish her six-pack.
Welcome to
Oh.
Iron Man.
It looks like you've been training for this for some time.
I've been doing this for about 25 years. Pack up, Wendy, I mean.
It's a locker room celebration, ladies and gentlemen.
Time to bring her out.
Okay. I guess we saw everything in that live shot.
Twice.
Yeah.
We saw it twice.
We're not going
Okay.
back.
All right.
Yeah.
And we
First of
suggested,
all,
when do you get out of there now?
Wendy, bless you.
Before you get covered
run.
in
Who
something
thought
other
of
than beer.
this?
All right.
Okay.
This year's 4th of July holiday expected to be
So-
slightly busier at LAX than last year. I want to show you a lot.
I like how they just move on.
Slow news day, hey?
So I guarantee I did not do this on the 4th of July. So when she's yelling, "Oh no," that's because someone literally threw up on her and the person next to her. And there was people throwing up. So this is an Ironman competition where they all get drunk and try to do certain things. Drunk. Who thought this was a great news segment to do? They had a discussion it was actually, pretty funny. The reaction, you have to see the video. It's out there everywhere. The reaction from the news anchors as well. When they were, when they watched all of this go down and they had to cut out of it, was pretty hysterical itself. It was pretty disgusting. I hope she volunteered for that. I wasn't forced on the Ironman competition throwing up drunk beat. I'm just saying. All right, so we have 1 more hour to go. We have a lot to get to in the next hour. We'll talk a little bit about some more craziness when it comes to Trump versus CNN. And you're just like, really? This is where our political debate is today. CNN blackmailing people for putting out memes and GIFs out there. And we'll get into some issues that are kind of under the radar, but I think that are important and need to be discussed because they're kind of troubling. And maybe we'll get into some stuff about North Korea as well, because I don't know what to do with North Korea. I don't know. What do we do with that country who has nothing to lose at this point and is just throwing up ICBMs? This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. 1 more hour to go. We'll be right back.
I look inside of myself. Oh, well, I find some kind.
North Korea state media is lauding what the country's leader, Kim Jong-un, has called a package of gifts for American bastards on their July 4 Independence Day holiday. Oh, well, how nice of him. Just a package of gifts. That was an intercontinental ballistic missile that could probably hold a nuclear warhead and could reach Alaska.
What a wacko. You know, what I don't understand about that whole situation is, what do they want? Why? Just to say that they're, have the world acknowledge that they're there?
I don't know.
They want South Korea to
they
be
want
unified?
power, I guess. Well, yeah, that's probably is part of it. They're just mad because they don't have South Korea too. I don't know. It's just so dumb. So state media said Kim supervised the launch of Pyongyang's first intercontinental ballistic missile Tuesday, which it says is powerful enough to reach the U.S. mainland. With a broad smile on his face, Kim called on officials to frequently send big and small gift packages to the Yankees. The Yankees? What is he? Is he a Confederate now?
Yeah.
That's what the state media has reported. The report said the missile was able to carry a large-size heavy nuclear warhead, and despite extreme overload and vibration, the nuclear warhead detonation control device successfully worked. Oh, that's nice. That's comforting. So Nikki Haley, the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, warned North Korea Wednesday that America has considerable military options at its disposal following that country's intercontinental ballistic missile launch Tuesday, according to Fox News. Her remarks came during an emergency Security Council meeting on North Korea. She warned them and said, one of our capability lies with our considerable military forces. We will use them if we must, but we prefer not to have to go in that direction. Their illegal missile launch was not only dangerous, but reckless and irresponsible, she said. It showed that North Korea does not want to be part of a peaceful world. They have cast a dark shadow of conflict on all nations that strive for peace. And President Trump today took off from his very busy schedule of bashing the media and Mika and Joe, and actually tweeted out something to deal with this. Said trade between China and North Korea grew almost 40% in the first quarter. So much for China working with us, but we had to give it a try. So there we go. There's our situation with North Korea. Anyone have any solutions? 407-916-5400. Text to 23680. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee, the voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason. We are on till 10 p.m. tonight. We've been on since 8. In the first hour, I talked a little bit about Independence Day and what should unite us as a country and how we can't seem to be united as a country. This hour, there's a lot of different things I want to talk about. There's some things that are kind of going under the radar that I want to get into because they're really important. And, but of course, well, before I get to what CNN thought was the biggest story of the day at the beginning of the day.
Themselves?
Yes, don't give it away yet.
Okay.
Tom Benson is producing for me. You are the director of American Foreign Policy, Tom Benson?
Yes, sir.
What do we do in North Korea?
Well,
I know I'm like telling you to solve world peace right now.
Nikki Haley was just participating in saber rattling at the United Nations. That she should do. Put up a strong front, united front, if you will. Count on China. The problem with China helping contain North Korea is the fact that China will only do as much as it needs to do to reinforce its influence in the Pacific. So they'll do some things, and they'll probably, keep.
Well, they want that buffer between the U.S., South Korea, and them, which North Korea provides for them.
Correct.
Plus, they get a lot. I think they import a bunch of coal from North Korea. So, it's a tough situation. 407-916-5400. Text to 23680. We will take calls on that if anyone has solutions. I did post on my personal Facebook page. You can send me a friend request on Facebook. Search Michael Yaffee, and I posted this because I said I don't know what to do. I don't know. So I got a bunch of responses. One person said 59 tomahawks and a Moab. 59 tomahawks and a Moab. That'll take care of North Korea. A little bit more complicated than that, but, I like where you're thinking. One person said, start evacuating South Korea now and surrounding countries get as many out as possible. Nothing wrong with that. With what? North Korea is going to do nothing. They said bomb the S out of them on Christmas Eve after you've evacuated. That would be difficult to do. Let's see. One person said we need to put pressure on China. China refines all of North Korea's oil and can shut them down if they wanted to. Let's see. So it's it's a tough situation. I really don't know the answer. So I'm kind of like throwing it out there. I got a text from someone who said, let's see, North Korea, I know what to do. We start pulling our military out of South Korea since they elected a communist who is sympathetic to the North. Then we increase our Navy presence and build Japan, Taiwan, and the Philippines militarily. So there's one solution. Lots of different solutions to this. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what to do. Let's take a call here real quick. Let's see. Joe from Titusville calls all the time, and he has the solution. Joe, you're solving world peace right now. Very important. Tell us what we should do.
Okay. Since we have the largest economy in the world, it's really simple. Those countries that want to continue to trade with North Korea are fine. It's free world. They can do what they want. They can just they can keep their products and not sell them here in the largest economy in the world. That would put pressure on China, and you tell the global, companies, if you want to do business in the United States, you don't do business with the countries where we have embargoes against, whether it be Iran, North Korea, and any of the other tyrants that want to.
So basically, that's kind of a different way of putting pressure on China then to solve the problem.
Right. And you can also do it by, we can also do, import duties since we're having to pay to.
Well, Trump has actually proposed something like that, I believe.
Yeah. But he's got to follow through with it,
Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen.
I didn't say Trump was necessarily that bad of a person. He's got
I never said you did.
Some inputs that he could use from his business community, but he's got to use them.
Gotcha.
Texting doesn't do anything, neither does executive orders.
Gotcha.
You got to get things through Congress, and he's got to put pressure on China. That's the thing that
But tweeting is so much easier. Tweeting's so much easier, Joe.
And it's fun. I enjoy them. Don't get me wrong. I can write whole comedy routines off this stuff.
All right, Joe. I appreciate your call. So Joe thinks, so we have the military option, put pressure on China. Joe says we should even, embargo China, basically, if they don't shape up, which is never going to happen. There's too many of our American businesses that are dependent on that, on China. Exports coming into our country, so I don't think that's going to happen. Evacuate South Korea. Lots of different options. So this is a really big, it's a really big deal, and it's really troubling, and it's really hard to find any solution. So what was CNN's main story today? With all of this going on, we have the thing with North Korea. We still have the healthcare debate going on, trying to get healthcare reform passed. We're talking about tax reform. We're talking about people hating the country on Independence Day. We still have the threat of terrorism, even though ISIS seems to be on the run for the most part in some of Syria now. And all this stuff. And CNN decided instead today, this morning, to publish a story, a report titled, How CNN Found the Reddit User Behind the Trump Wrestling GIF, GIF. And there we go. And they actually found him. And his name is, I can't even say it, Han Bleephole Solo was the Reddit guy.
Yeah, it's his pen name.
He's the creator of he was apparently a creator of the video on Reddit. He was a part of some thread on Reddit that has a whole bunch of Trump stuff. Apparently, he's put a lot of nasty stuff, other nasty stuff up there as well. And CNN had to spend their time finding this guy because he impugned the integrity of CNN.
What integrity?
I think they impugned themselves.
Yeah.
So instead of CNN, doing what they, if I were CNN, if I were these panelists and this happened, I would just say, Trump, you're an idiot. This is not presidential. Move on.
Right.
But then what they did is first they overreact and say Trump is inciting violence against them, and then they said he's against the First Amendment, and now they go and find the person who put out this picture where Trump apparently got it from, and then they blackmail him and say, we'll release your identity if you don't, because I guess he came out and apologized immediately, said he's sorry that all this happened.
And he's not going to do it again.
He's not going to do it again. And then CNN comes out and said, if you do it again, basically what they said, we will post the thing.
Identity of the individual.
Yeah. CNN, this is from the article verbatim here. CNN is not publishing Han A. Blankhole Solo's name because he's a private citizen who has issued an extensive statement of apology. Showed his remorse by saying he has taken down all his offending posts, and because he has said he is not going to repeat this ugly behavior on social media again. Ugly behavior. It's a stupid video of WWE. It's not that big of a deal.
And all he has to do is come up with another identity.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point, actually. But CNN said, in addition, his statement could serve as an example to others not to do the same. But then the last line said CNN reserves the right to publish his identity should any of that change.
Well, isn't that big of them?
It's just so dumb. This whole thing is so stupid. What? Who cares? Not only that,
they're making themselves the story. And they always say journalists and journalism should not become part of the story. They are the story. And the reason they're doing it is because they love the publicity.
Yep. Well, that's true. You're right. Playing the victim, it gets a lot of publicity.
Yeah.
The ratings are up. This is what all this is about. These are ratings. They know that this whole thing with Trump in the media helps Trump and helps the media, really. It does, because their ratings are up. But what's even most amazing about this, most beyond reason about this, is they got the wrong guy.
Oh, really?
According to BuzzFeed, one user pointed out that what Trump tweeted wasn't actually Han A. Blankhole Solo's GIF. Trump's GIF included both video and audio, whereas the Rebel Smugglers wannabe GIF did not include audio. Furthermore, the original one was shorter, had a different aspect ratio, and had a WWE logo in the corner. Not even the colors are processed in the same manner. It's not the same one. They found the wrong guy. And then the right is responding. I like Ted Cruz. But now he's saying that this is unethical. And that he's saying CNN broke the law with their blackmail. And CNN could be prosecuted for what they're doing. I mean,
who's
this is so dumb.
Who's going to bring the prosecution, though? That's just it. This guy's not going to come out and sue CNN in a civil case either.
It just boggles my mind because it's all over a video from wrestling of a fake fight.
Wait a minute. No.
Wrestling.
No.
Where he's not even punching a CNN reporter. He's punching a logo. It's a metaphor for him beating up on CNN, fighting back against CNN. That's all it is. And the country would think it's psycho. Oh, jeez, Louise. This is beyond reason. So, despite all this, we're going to move on to some more important things. Because there's some things going on under the radar in healthcare. There's some things going under the radar in housing. And more, and we're going to talk about it. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
Listen to the latest episodes of Beyond Reason. Download the podcast at Spreaker.com. the place where we talk faith, culture, and politics. Beyond Reason Radio continues.
Yes, welcome back to the show, everyone. Make sure to send your host, Michael Yaffee, a friend request on Facebook. Search Michael Yaffee. Send me a friend request. I will accept it. You can follow me on Twitter as well at Beyond Reason R. You can call 407-916-5400 or text 23680. And we have Tom Benson producing as well. So there's some other things going on a little bit under the radar because everyone's focused on CNN blackmailing a Reddit user for name, and his Reddit name is Han A blank hole solo. This is our political discourse in this country today. But there's someone in Wisconsin's district, Paul Ryan's district in Wisconsin, and he is running against Paul Ryan. And he's basically a socialist Democrat like Bernie Sanders. His name is Randy Bryce. Apparently he was an iron worker, so he's trying to have this whole portrayal that he's a man of the people working the iron and all this stuff. So he's been out there getting more and more attention and all this stuff. And he was on CNN today, and believe it or not, this is actually one time where CNN actually did something good, which is amazing. But this guy, Randy Bryce, who's running against Paul Ryan, was on CNN with host John Berman and Poppy Harlow. I had never heard of Poppy Harlow until today, a woman reporter on there. And they're talking about different things, talking about different issues. And they ask him about his take on healthcare because you have the whole healthcare debates continuing on because the Senate can't get their act together. Now they're talking about repealing and replacing later, which would be fine, but I don't know if that's ever going to happen. I feel like this is never going to get done because there's not enough conservatives in Congress who actually have the guts to repeal it like they said they would. I'm glad I got that off my chest a little bit. But they talk about this and they ask him about it, and they kind of call him out on something, which is very interesting, and they're pretty much right. Here's the exchange.
My mother, they're trying to take away everybody's ability to have independence.
You're not just against, though, what the Republicans are trying to do in Congress right now. You want to go even further than Obamacare. You're for single payer. You're for basically universal health care. You know, and there's analysis from a group called the Urban Institute, which we haven't been able to double check, but it says, you know, if Bernie Sanders, you look at his plan for universal coverage that he ran on during the primary, you know, it could cost $32 trillion over 10 years. Even if it's half that, that's a ton of money. How do you propose paying for it?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a lot of people that are getting away with not paying their fair share in taxes right now, and they benefit the most from society.
You want to raise $32 trillion in taxes?
Well, I'm not saying that we have to look at ways to just increase complete costs. There's a lot of things that we can look at as far as making things cost effective.
Death panels.
But again, there's a lot of people that are not paying what, you know, their fair share of taxes. There's corporations getting away with a lot.
That would be quite a tax hike. I mean, that's an astonishing number, $32 trillion over a decade. But let's get you, before you go, on a really key issue right now.
So he's for single payer, and there's an institute out there that did a study on this, which I have the details here. NPR actually had a report on the details here, which his plan, Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All plan, would cost $32 trillion over 10 years. And they ask him, how do you expect to pay for that? Even if it's just half of that, how do you expect to pay for that? Oh, well, the rich aren't paying their fair share of taxes. We're going to tax them more. He goes, You're gonna raise $32 trillion in taxes? Huh? Well, there could be other things we do. We cut costs, which goes to the whole point I've been making, that they would have to cut costs. And do you trust the government cutting those costs, being in charge of cutting those costs? Because I don't, which is why I don't want a big government program in, because the resources are still limited no matter if the private sector has it or is the government that does it. I would much rather the private sector allocate the resources than a big government bureaucracy because they're going to cut costs. They're going to have to. But he's saying we could raise $32 trillion in taxes. So I found details on this report. It's from it's the Urban Institute and the Tax Policy Center, which is out of the Urban Institute. They estimated this week that Sanders' taxation and spending plans, including outlays for programs like Medicare for all and free college tuition. Dear Lord. Oh, it's just sad how much we love socialism now. Would together add $18 trillion to the national debt over a decade. Now, that's even beating Obama, what he was able to do in 8 years. In addition, the center's Howard Gleckman, who looked at the study, he wrote it would add $3 trillion in interest costs.
Jeez.
So the interest on the debt would be $3 trillion. Okay. Oh, this is going to go well. He called it an unprecedented increase in government borrowing. We're already $20 trillion in. And they want to increase it by another $18 trillion. It's just crazy. So the center had already estimated that Sanders' tax plan alone would add $15.3 trillion in revenue over 10 years. So he does have a way to raise taxes, and that would get $15.3 trillion. That's $15.3 trillion that he's taking out of that his plan would take out of the private sector and dump into government bureaucracies. $15.3 trillion in taxes over 10 years.
But it's
added
free
to what we have. Yeah, exactly right. Oh, well, I thought it was free. No, it costs money. Someone's going to have to pay for it.
Free tuition.
And this whole idea that we're just going to take from the rich, it doesn't work like that, people. You take from businesses, you take from the rich, they pass it on to the consumer.
Or they go out of business.
They go out of business so people lose jobs, or they pass it on to the consumer so the middle class and lower class has to pay more money. The rich are already paying the vast majority of the tax.
And what would the deductible be on something like that, huh?
Nothing, I guess. There is no deductible.
Right.
It's free. Medicare for all. Here you go. Healthcare for you and college tuition for you.
Yes, but you're over 80. You don't deserve any more government money to keep yourself going.
You're a little kid. You're a baby who was born, and you know what? You have a genetic disorder. We're going to cut your life support, even though there might be another hospital that could treat you. We're going to cut your life support.
That's right.
That would never happen. No. Oh, wait a minute. It is happening. The Tax Policy Center has estimated that Sanders' health proposal would cost the government an additional $32 trillion to what it pays now. $32 trillion. That's well more than twice as much as the Sanders campaign says the health plan would cost. The campaign put it at $13.8 trillion over a decade. Of course, government programs never say what they actually would cost. Oh, boy. According to the Tax Policy Center, Sanders' plans would increase taxes across the board, but they would provide bigger benefits than tax hikes for many Americans as well, particularly the lowest income. That's how it works, redistribution. People in the bottom 20% of income would pay an average of $209 more in taxes, but receive nearly $10,300 in benefits on average. Wow. So they would have to pay more, but they would be getting $10,300 of benefits from the government on average in the lower 20% of income.
Plus a free iPhone.
I mean, do we not understand that is a complete restructuring of our economy at that point? I mean, they're already getting benefits, but $10,300, that's a complete restructuring of how our economy works, which is the goal, I'm guessing. This kind of goes back to what I was talking about last week when they talk about how the leftists talk about they have the moral high ground and they do this stuff because they care about people. And I say, No, we care about people. We care about capitalism, which has created more prosperity and wealth than any system in the history of mankind, which also helps the middle and lower classes more than socialism. And yet you're trying to restructure and put a system in place that gives more to the government, has government more in control of resources than the free market. And when the government's in control of resources, it takes away all the incentives for growth. It takes away all the incentives for economic expansion. It takes away all the incentives for innovation, and it has costs. And those costs have to be cut. And they'll be cut by rationing. And it will not look good. It will not look good. But $32 trillion. Sanders says that it widely overestimates the cost of the healthcare plan. Of course, he would say that, but this is just, it's a complete restructuring and rethinking of the role of government. It's a complete restructuring and rethinking of the economy. 407-916-5400. Text to 23680. There's another thing that's going on behind the scenes that is also, it talks about the problem of government too involved in the economy and how we need to fix it, but how the people in Congress, once again, are not willing to do it. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
Download the iHeart Radio app and catch the Beyond Reason Radio podcast. Your safe space for conservative thought, not for political correctness. Yaffee is back right now.
So another story that was definitely under the radar that I didn't see until today that really deserves a lot of attention because it's actually vital to the future of our economy, because this whole situation is what almost pretty much did crash the economy in 2007, 2008. The Senate Committee on Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs held a hearing last week to lay out guiding principles for housing finance reform legislation. I got this from thedailysignal.com. While it's a positive development that the Senate is getting to work on housing finance, conservatives should be wary of the way things are starting out. The reason why they should be wary is, a lot of conservatives think this could be good because they understand that the biggest reason for the crash in 2007, 2008 was the implicit government guaranteed sponsored institutions, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, in the housing market, which totally screwed up the housing market and caused a whole bunch of problems. And we're going to get into some of the details of that and basically almost crashed the economy. So many conservatives want to get rid of those government-sponsored entities. All they've done is created tons of problems. This will be, by the way, this will be extremely hard to do. And it's actually against even my best interest at the moment, because if I wanted to get a house soon, I would probably have to get a house maybe through Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac or an FHA government loan or something. Mm-hmm. And now in the long run, prices would probably go down or whatever. But Senator Bob Corker, he's a Republican from Tennessee, says, "It seems to me that the consolidation is coming around to the fact that we need to have an explicit guarantee. We need to acknowledge if that is going to be there will be people on my side of the aisle that will be a tough one to get to." So there are some in the Senate hearing that believe that not only we should get rid of the implicit government guarantee that was in part of these government-sponsored entities, which had to be totally taken over in the housing crash, and turn it to an explicit guarantee where the government explicitly says we will back these loans. That will create more of a problem than before. It says in the Daily Signal, among conservatives, there's no consolidation around an explicit government guarantee. Conservatives are united in their desire to end government backing to make homes more affordable, reduce risky debt, and protect taxpayers. This is an important debate that's happening because, they're debating reform of Dodd-Frank, but they're also understanding that there needs to be reform with these government-sponsored entities to prevent a future crash. Because it seems like we're making a lot of the same mistakes. I've pointed out on this show before that they're once again lowering the standards in these government-sponsored entities to try to get more people in housing, which could cause another bubble. And this needs to change. Now, I found an op-ed from Paul Atkins, who was a former SEC commissioner, and he writes for CNBC here, and he lays this out perfectly on what we need to understand about this and why it's crucial to understand this whole issue, and why we need to get on our conservative senators in Congress and make sure they don't go down the same road of expanding these government entities. He says in his op-ed, he said, to reform the housing market, get rid of these two bloated behemoths. He says Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are the real culprits at the heart of the last financial crisis. Now, if you listen to Occupy Wall Street or Bernie Sanders or anyone on the left, they will tell you, no, it's evil Wall Street and deregulation, right? No. That is not what was at the heart of this crisis. He says, finally, a bipartisan effort is underway to reform the too-big-to-fail home financing industry institutions. And he points out why those need to go. He says, almost a decade after the financial crisis, in addition to repairing damage caused by the flawed Dodd-Frank law, policymakers must work swiftly to wind down Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, the two institutions at the heart of the last financial crisis. He said it's been a failure, and the big part, he said, key to reforming these government-sponsored entities is deconstructing the Obama-era financial crisis narrative that the Great Recession was due principally to insufficient bank regulation and dodgy Wall Street behavior. This is one of the biggest lies in politics right now. I talk about sometimes the biggest lies in politics. One of the biggest lies that I talk about a lot is this idea that there's separation of church and state in the Constitution, religious freedom. It's one of the most misinterpreted things in the Constitution. It's freedom of religion, not from religion. That's one of the biggest lies. But this is another big lie in recent politics, that the financial crisis was caused by insufficient bank regulation and dodgy Wall Street behavior. There was some of that happened, but most of it was not caused by that. It was caused by those government-sponsored entities. He points out that he says the GSEs provide a liquid secondary mortgage market by buying loans from mortgage originators, so they in turn have funds to extend more home loans. Until 1992, they followed traditional underwriting standards in determining which loans to require, very few with down payments below 3%. But the GSE Act of 1992 set aggressive targets for them to purchase loans originated to borrowers at or below the median income level, many of whom were subprime. To meet the goals, the GSEs lowered underwriting standards for mortgages they purchased from originators who before had little incentive to originate poorly underwritten loans and so forth. He says because of those, the GSE's large market share, low and moderate income levels lending targets, first set at 30%, had immediate nationwide impact. In 1989, just 7% of the mortgages were made with a down payment below 10%. But in 1994, the share of low down payment mortgages had grown to 29%. The Department of Housing and Urban Development steadily increased the targets to 55% through 2007. This hurt competition. This screwed up the market. This basically created a bubble and basically created the collapse. Says this increased the number of prospective home buyers and thus demand for homes, creating a housing price and construction bubble that spanned 1997 through 2007 and dwarfed the largest of all previous such bubbles by a multiple of 9. When the bubble popped, low and middle income American families were hit the hardest. He says it's time that we need to get rid of these. Simply setting up a new government agency that mimics the GSEs while leaving taxpayers on the hook for losses is unacceptable. Congress should certainly maintain its focus on undoing the economic havoc caused by Dodd-Frank, but it must not lose sight of the need to address Dodd-Frank's biggest omission, Fannie and Freddie. The threat to our financial system remains, and until Congress winds down these GSEs and ends the federal government's destabilizing role in U.S. mortgage finance, efforts to improve U.S. financial market stability will be met with only limited success. I think he makes a great point. This is from Paul Atkins, former SEC commissioner, and he points out the things that, there's tons of books on this. Just read most economists who have written about the housing collapse, who have written about the financial collapse, it all points back to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. All of them do. Even the moderate ones, even some of the liberal ones point back to the problems there. But another one to read is The Housing Boom and Bust by Thomas Sowell. He has a whole other book that I've read. It talks about this explicitly, how those institutions inflated the market and created all kinds of problems, and this is not the role of government. We have gotten to a point where and I talk about it all the time, but we've gotten to a point where we totally misunderstood the role of government in our society. We now think it's beyond to protect our rights, and now it's to provide things like housing, education, healthcare, and all this stuff. And every time they do it, it just creates more problems. And it's not the role of government. I talked about earlier in this hour how it's going to cost $32 trillion for Bernie Sanders' healthcare plan. You know how they would really pay for a lot of that? They would cut the military. The military, which is one of our true roles of our government. The whole reason we united in the first place is so we could have a united military to fight against our enemies. That was one of the biggest reasons. They would immediately say we need to cut the military. And you think that sounds good now. Oh, we spend too much anyways. Why do we need to spend this much? Oh, wait until they cut it then. And wait until all of a sudden our country isn't as safe. We are so arrogant, and we believe it's always been like this, and we believe it will always be like this, where we don't have to fear invasion from another country or something like that. But that's because we have such a strong military, and they want to cut that, and they're going to dump all this money into government, into these government programs, which is not the role of government in the first place.
We've already been invaded.
Good point. So I thought I'd bring it up. I thought he made some excellent points here in this op-ed, but it's something going on under the radar that's not getting a lot of attention, that the Senate is addressing how to deal with this. And it needs to be. This is the important issues, not stupid CNN tweets and all that stuff. This is a really important issue that really could affect the future of our economy. So I wanted to point that out. All right, we will end the show once again with things that made Yaffee Laffy. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
If you like Beyond Reason Radio, well, make sure to show it by liking the Facebook page at facebook.com/Beyond Reason Radio. Your voice of truth in a world of fake news. Beyond Reason Radio continues right now.
All right, enough of this talk about the possible collapse of our economy and and the restructuring us into a socialist based economy and getting rid of our military prowess in the world and all that stuff. It is that time of the show once again. Yes, it is time for things that made Yaffee Laffy. Oh, this song might be familiar to some of you. On this edition of Things That Made Yaffee Laffy, and frankly, I don't really understand this. That song is from the Pirates of the Caribbean ride at Disneyland. And they have one at Disney World. You know, I don't know how similar they are. I've never been to the one at Disneyland.
From what I've seen in this story, it's pretty similar. Yeah.
Pretty similar. So, there's a part in the Disneyland ride where they have an auction. They have a part where it's auction, take a wench for a bride. And it's obviously like a woman who's tied up, probably kidnapped or something, and they're auctioning her off as a bride to pirates.
Sure.
And Disney keeping it PC, politically correct, decided that they were going to get rid of that. That was too offensive. And my question is, offensive to who? Yeah, I found this from pjmedia.com, and the way they put it is so funny. They say, pirates, a traditionally oppressed and misunderstood group in America, will surely take comfort in the news that Disney's popular Pirates of the Caribbean ride will be getting a politically correct makeover in 2018. Despite its popularity with tourists, the bride auction scene, in which a pirate auctioneer is offering up a lusty redhead to the highest bidder, has been deemed sexist and will be revamped. Following a remodel, the scene will depict an auction of goods, not women, and the popular redhead will be transformed into a female pirate. The story, the way it does it, so funny too.
So they're going to make the woman to be a pirate also, as opposed to being a civilian.
I don't understand this. They're pirates. Who would be offended except maybe pirates? Or is there a pirate base that goes to Disney that's very offended and did a protest here about how dare they portray us pirates as doing something so evil? like what? It said this will no doubt be seen as an important step forward in repairing relations between pirates and non-fictional people. Of course, as with any strides forward in the inclusion of members of an historically maligned subset of genre fiction, there is still much to be done. This story is so funny. Members of the pirate... this story is great on PJ Media. Members of the Pirate Inclusion League of Landlubbers and Gender Equality... He says, a group I just made up, comment that changing the redhead bride into a swashbuckling female pirate is an excellent idea, since even though it's totally unrealistic, it's less demeaning to women, which is always more important than truth. The whole point of Pirates of the Caribbean and pirates is that they're pirates. And that pirates are criminals. And that pirates are idiots and drunkens and doing bad things. And that's the whole point of that part of the ride. It's just another example of that. It's not meant to be demeaning towards women. I don't see anyone leaving that and saying, oh, wow, I think we should auction off brides to pirates in real life. This is so stupid. It's so dumb. Oh, man. I mean, what happens next? Are they going to portray pirates as just kind people? Oh, those pirates, we can't portray them as stealing because that could be insensitive. It's just ridiculous. I just don't get it. People are so politically correct, they're not even thinking of what they're doing. It's not meant to look good. They're pirates. They're criminals. That's the point. So dumb. All right. On that happy note, I hope that made you laugh. It made me laugh and yell at the same time. I thank you all for joining me today. If you missed any of the show, make sure to check out the podcast anywhere podcasts are available. You can download the Beyond Reason Radio app at the Google Play or Apple App Store. Listen to it on iHeartRadio. Or you can send me a friend request on Facebook or follow me on Twitter at Beyond Reason R, and I'll be on tomorrow at 7 p.m. and I'll catch you guys then.
Oh, well,